The dining room smelled like garlic and rosemary, my mother's signature Sunday roast filling the air with warmth that never quite reached me. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier light. 12 people around the table, and I was seated at the corner, half hidden by a decorative centerpiece my mother had positioned there deliberately. My grandfather, my father's father, sat at the head of the table. 84 years old, retired investment banker, and the only person in this family who'd ever looked at me like I was worth something. My sister Vanessa had been talking for 20 minutes straight about her new Mercedes. The one my parents had helped her buy. The third car they'd helped her buy since she turned 16. Before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand what it was like growing up as the spare child. I was born 18 months after Vanessa. From the beginning, I was the backup, the understudy who never got called to the stage. Vanessa was beautiful, charismatic, the kind of child strangers stopped to compliment. I was quiet, awkward, the kind of child people forgot was in the room. My parents didn't hide their preference. They just pretended it didn't exist. When Vanessa wanted ballet lessons, my parents found the best studio in the city. When I asked to try piano, my mother said we couldn't afford 2 extracurriculars. When Vanessa needed a tutor for the SATs, my parents hired one at $150 an hour for 6 months. When I struggled with AP chemistry, my father told me to figure it out because you're supposed to be the smart one. The smart one. That's what they called me when they meant the one who doesn't need us. Vanessa got a brand new Audi for her 16th birthday. I got a used Honda Civic with 90,000 miles and a lecture about being grateful. When Vanessa crashed her Audi into a guardrail 6 months later texting, though my parents never admitted, they replaced it within a week. When my Civic's transmission failed during my junior year, I took the bus for 3 months until I saved enough from my part-time job to fix it. I paid for my own college. Scholarships, work-study, 2 jobs during summers, 1 job during semesters. I graduated magna cum laude in finance, while Vanessa took 6 years to finish a communications degree my parents funded entirely. But I never complained. I never confronted them. I just watched, documented, and built something of my own. I became an investment analyst at a firm no one in my family had heard of. By 29, I was making $185,000 a year plus bonuses. I lived in a modest apartment. I drove a sensible car. I dressed down when I visited home. They thought I was barely getting by. They thought I was the struggling one, the one who'd never quite figured it out, the one they shook their heads about when I wasn't around. They had no idea. My therapist, Dr. Okonkwo, had helped me understand something crucial. You don't owe them your success story. They didn't help you write it. What none of them knew was that Grandpa had been watching too. And 5 years ago, he'd called me into his study and changed my life. Sunday dinner followed the usual script. Vanessa dominated the conversation with updates about her influencer brand. She had 3,000 followers and had never made $1 from it. My mother nodded along adoringly. My father asked follow-up questions like Vanessa was presenting a TED talk. The Mercedes is just so smooth, Vanessa was saying, twirling her wine glass. You really do get what you pay for. Not like those basic economy cars some people drive. She glanced at me when she said it. Subtle enough that my parents could pretend they didn't notice. Obvious enough that I felt it. My husband Nathan squeezed my hand under the table. He came from a family where siblings celebrated each other's successes. The first time he witnessed one of these dinners, he'd been so angry he couldn't speak for an hour afterward. Now he just held my hand and waited for the moment he knew was coming. Because tonight was different. Tonight Grandpa had a plan. Speaking of investments, Grandpa said, his voice cutting through Vanessa's monologue. Rachel, how's that portfolio working out for you? My mother frowned. What portfolio? The one I set up for her. Grandpa's eyes met mine across the table. The $4.2 million investment portfolio. Last time we talked, it was performing quite well. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father went pale. Dad, my father said carefully, I think there's been some kind of mistake. No mistake. Grandpa reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a leather folder. I've been building this for Rachel since she was 18. Started with $500,000 from your mother's life insurance, the portion that was meant for grandchildren's education, which you spent on Vanessa's sorority dues and spring break trips instead of splitting equally. My mother's face drained of color. That money we had to make decisions. You made decisions, Grandpa agreed. You decided Vanessa needed a $40,000 Sweet 16 party while Rachel got a cake from the grocery store. You decided Vanessa needed 6 years of tuition while Rachel worked 3 jobs. You decided one daughter was worth investing in and the other wasn't. That's not fair, Vanessa said, her voice rising. I had opportunities. You had handouts, Grandpa corrected. Rachel had obstacles. And she still outperformed you in every measurable way. He slid the folder across the table to me. I opened the folder with steady hands. Inside were account statements, trust documents, investment records going back 11 years. I'd seen them before Grandpa had shown me when I turned 25, but seeing them now, in front of everyone, made them feel different. More real. When your grandmother died, Grandpa said to the table, she left specific instructions. The education fund was to be split equally between grandchildren. I watched your parents, he looked at my father, take the entire amount and use it for Vanessa. I said nothing at the time. I wanted to see if it was a one-time thing. He paused. It wasn't. My mother stood up. Dad, this is completely inappropriate. You're embarrassing yourself. Sit down, Linda. She didn't sit. But she stopped talking. I kept records, Grandpa continued. He pulled a second folder from his jacket, thicker, older, filled with papers I recognized from our private meetings. Every dollar spent on Vanessa versus Rachel. Every tuition payment. Every car. Every vacation. Every emergency that only ever seemed to apply to one grandchild. He laid the spreadsheets on the table. Years of data compiled meticulously. $673,000, he said. That's what you've given Vanessa over the past 12 years, not including the education fund. Rachel received nothing, not for college. Not for her first apartment. Not when she needed surgery and couldn't afford the copay. She never asked, my father said weakly. She asked once. Grandpa's voice was ice. When she was 22, she called you because her transmission had failed and she couldn't afford to fix it. She was working 2 jobs and taking a full course load. Do you remember what you told her? My father's jaw tightened. You told her to figure it out, Grandpa said. Then you bought Vanessa a new laptop that same week because her old one was too slow. My mother turned to me, her face cycling through shock, anger, and finally landing on something that looked almost like pleading. Rachel, sweetheart, we never meant to. You always seemed so capable. Capable, I repeated. The word tasted bitter. That's what you told yourselves when you ignored me. That I was capable. That I didn't need help. That Vanessa needed more because she was less competent. Vanessa's face flushed. You're not incompetent, I agreed. You're just used to never having to try. And now you're 31. You've never held a job longer than 18 months. And you think $800 on a car payment is reasonable because you then never had to budget for anything in your life. That's enough, my father said, his voice strained. This is a family dinner, not a what? Grandpa asked. Not a reckoning. Not a moment where you actually have to look at what you've done. He stood up slowly, using the table for support. 84 years old, and he still commanded every room he entered. The portfolio is in Rachel's name alone. It has been since she turned 25. I'm the trustee until I pass, and then Nathan takes over. He looked at my parents. You have no claim to it, no access. No say in how she uses it. Dad, you can't just... My father started. I already did. Grandpa smiled, thin and sharp. Years ago, I watched this family treat one daughter like a princess and the other like furniture. And I decided that if you wouldn't invest in Rachel, I would. Vanessa shoved back from the table. This is insane. That money should be split. We're both grandchildren. You've already received your split, Grandpa said calmly. You received it through your parents who took what should have been shared and gave it all to you. Consider the past 12 years your inheritance. Rachel is receiving hers now. The room had gone completely still. My aunt was staring at my mother like she was seeing her for the first time. My uncle had stopped pretending to check his phone. Even the children at the kids' table had gone quiet, sensing something significant happening. My mother tried one more time. Her voice shifted softer, almost gentle, a tone I'd heard her use on Vanessa thousands of times but never once on me. Rachel, honey, I know things haven't always been perfect, but we're family. We can work through this together. You don't have to punish us. I'm not punishing you. My voice came out calm, measured, the voice I'd practiced in therapy for years. I'm just done pretending this family treated me fairly. I am done being the capable one who never gets help while Vanessa gets a new car every time she crashes the last one. That's not... Mom, you bought her a Mercedes last month. You've never bought me anything. Not a car. Not a coffee maker for my first apartment. Not a wedding gift beyond a $150 check. My mother's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. I'm not angry, I said, and I meant it. The anger had burned itself out years ago, leaving behind something cleaner. I'm just finished. I stopped needing you a long time ago. The difference is, now you know it. I stood up and Nathan stood with me. Rachel, please. Vanessa's voice had changed. The confidence was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like panic. I didn't know. I didn't realize. You knew. I looked at my sister. You made jokes about my car. You called my apartment quaint. You told me I should try harder when I could and afford to come to your birthday trip to CBO the one. Mom and Dad paid for. Vanessa had no response. Thank you for dinner, I said to the room. Grandpa, I'll call you tomorrow. He nodded, satisfaction written across his face. I'll be waiting, sweetheart. The call started before we reached the car. Nathan silenced my phone without looking at it. The December evening was cold, our breath visible in the air, and I felt lighter than I had in years. You okay? He asked. I waited for the guilt, the second guessing. The familiar voice asking if maybe I'd been too harsh, too dramatic, too much. It never came. I think I'm better than okay, I said. I think I finally stopped waiting for them to love me correctly. He pulled me close. They never deserved you. I know. I think I finally believe it. The aftermath was swift and predictable. By midnight, I had 53 missed calls. Mom, Dad, Vanessa, aunts, uncles, cousins who'd never spoken to me voluntarily. The texts painted a clear picture. Mom, you've destroyed this family over money. I hope you're proud, Dad. Your grandfather has clearly lost his faculties. We should discuss power of attorney. Vanessa, I can't believe you did this. You've always been jealous of me. This proves it. Then, 6 hours later, Vanessa again. My credit card got declined. I need $2,000 for rent. This isn't funny, Rachel. I laughed out loud at that one. By day 3, the calls had reached 84. My mother left a 7-minute voicemail that cycled through denial, anger, bargaining, and finally tears. She ended with, "We gave you everything. We sacrificed for you." I saved it to the folder I kept. Evidence. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that the pattern I'd seen my whole life was real. On day 5, my father appeared at our apartment building. Security called up to ask if I wanted to see him. I watched on the lobby camera as he paced, rehearsing something, running his hands through his thinning hair. "Tell him I'm not available," I said. He waited for 40 minutes before leaving. He didn't try again. 3 months later. Morning light filtered through the windows of our new condo, the one Nathan and I had purchased outright. Number mortgage, no debt, just ours. It had a view of the city, a home office for my consulting work, and a guest room for Grandpa when he visited. My phone sat silent on the nightstand. The calls had tapered to nothing. My parents had shifted strategies. Now they were telling extended family that I'd manipulated Grandpa, that his age had made him vulnerable, that I'd stolen from the family. The family had stopped believing them around week 2, when Grandpa sent everyone copies of the financial records showing exactly how my parents had distributed resources over the years. I'd heard from cousins that Vanessa's lifestyle was adjusting. The Mercedes had been repossessed. Turns out my parents had co-signed but stopped making payments once they realized I wasn't going to be their retirement plan. Her influencer brand had pivoted to authenticity content about living on a budget, which would have been ironic if it weren't so pathetic. My parents had stopped speaking to Grandpa. He didn't seem to mind. "Your mother called the building phone last night," Nathan said, setting coffee beside me. "Left a message about Easter. What did she want?" She said she hopes we can put this behind us, that she's willing to forgive you if you apologize. I actually laughed. She's willing to forgive me. That's what she said. Interesting. I thought about it. Not about apologizing, that would never happen, but about whether I wanted any relationship with them at all. Maybe someday, I said. If she can acknowledge what actually happened instead of rewriting history. If she can treat me like a daughter instead of a resource she forgot to invest in. And if she can't, then nothing changes. I've spent 29 years being invisible to them. A few more won't hurt. Grandpa called every Sunday now. We talked for hours about markets, about life, about the past and the future. He never mentioned my parents. Neither did I. He'd given me more than money. He'd given me proof that I wasn't imagining things, that the differential treatment I'd felt my whole life was real, documented, undeniable. He'd given me permission to stop apologizing for taking up space. Some people say forgiveness is necessary for healing. Maybe that's true for some wounds. For me, healing meant accepting that some people would never change, and that I didn't have to keep offering them chances to prove me wrong. I used to think family meant endurance. Absorbing slights and calling it love. Shrinking to make room for people who would never make room for me. Being the capable one until capable meant invisible. Now I understood something different. Real family sees you. Real family invests in you not just money, but time, attention, belief. Real family doesn't need a spreadsheet to prove they value you equally, because you can feel it in every interaction. The $4.2 million wasn't about the money. It was about recognition. It was Grandpa saying, I saw what they did, and I refused to let it stand. It was proof that someone had been paying attention all along, even when I thought I was completely alone. Nathan set down his coffee and wrapped his arms around me from behind. What are you thinking about? How quiet it is, I said. How peaceful. For 29 years, there had been noise, the constant hum of trying to earn love, trying to prove worth, trying to be enough for people who had already decided I wasn't. Now there was just stillness, just presence, just life finally mine to live. The morning sun warmed my face through the window. Somewhere, my sister was learning what it meant to earn things. Somewhere, my parents were spinning narratives about victimhood. And here in my home with my husband, in my life I was finally completely visible, finally valued, finally free. The day I stopped waiting for them to see me was the day I finally started seeing myself. If you've been the invisible child in your family, share your story below. You're not alone, and choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's survival. Hit like if you've had to build your own worth because no one else would. Every share helps someone still waiting to be seen.